Alright, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the Pokemon TCG Pocket channel, and today we're actually going to look at some online tournament results here for essentially what is the first week of Mythical Island being released. Now, I actually do these type of videos over on my second YouTube channel for the Pokemon TCG, where I do the same thing, where I look at the online tournament results, seeing what decks were winning in this past week, and I thought, why not do the same for Pokemon TCG Pocket? In fact, the Pocket tournaments end up being a lot bigger than the online Pokemon TCG tournaments. I mean, the Pocket tournaments have like 1,500 players in some of them, which is insanely mind-blowing. So I thought it was a good idea to try this series out here for Pocket on the Pocket channel. And if you like this idea and enjoy the content here, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And if you go on to enjoy the video, leave a like and all the good stuff. I'll leave a link to the site I'm using, play.limitless. If you're ever interested in playing in a Pocket or TCG tournament yourself, definitely check it out down below. So we got 6 tournaments pulled up here. We do have a lot of players in them. Most of the tournaments had about 250 plus players, so they were still pretty giant. So the first one here is the Puma Tour tournament, which was won by a Gyarados Greninja deck. Now, it's not the Gyarados EX Greninja deck, as you can see. It is Gyarados Greninja Druddigon, not using the EX Gyarados, which is kind of surprising to see. I don't think this was an error either. I think this is just legit using this Gyarados here with the attack. Hyper Beam, discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. It does need 4 water. This is a lot weaker than the Gyarados EX, but it does make your opponent have to take 3 points to win the game. They have to take out 3 Pokemon. Instead of just killing the Gyarados and like the Druddigon to win the game with 3 points, that way they have to go through 3 different Pokemon. So it makes it a bit harder, I guess. They have to go through this Gyarados. It is an interesting concept. It does need 4 water. There is no colors, so if you end up getting a fire energy in your energy zone, you could get griefed, I guess. But it's interesting it won the tournament. It was able to beat a Scolipede Weezing deck in the finals here. I do think this deck has some potential. The idea is you Scolipede here with its attack, Venoshock, which for a dark and a colorless energy does 70 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is poisoned, you get to do 50 more damage. So you do 120 damage for just 2 energy, which is actually pretty good. Now, you can poison your opponent, of course, via the help of Weezing with its ability, Gas Leak, where you can make your opponent's active poisoned if Weezing is in the active spot. So you have Weezing in the active, you poison your opponent, and eventually you can go into the Scolipede, and technically that does 130 damage, because the poison will add an extra damage on top of Scolipede's attack. Weezing's a pretty good card, and I know some people have been trying to figure out good ways to play it. I was a big fan of the Weezing Wigglytuff deck. That's the deck that I was really enjoying in the last format we had on Pocket. I really like Weezing Wigglytuff, probably one of my favorite decks on Pocket to play. And that deck seems good. This is kind of like another version of Weezing. You have the Koga supporter, right? You can just Koga your Weezing. The interesting too in this deck, there is a single copy of Mew EX, trying to utilize genome hacking a little bit, though you could obviously end up getting a bunch of Psych Energy. That's kind of the issue with mixing the types together. But Mew does have genome hacking. We all know Mew EX is a very strong card. Genome hacking is a great attack. You can copy any attack, and sometimes you can copy those big attacks without really getting a downside to copying the attacks, which is huge. We do have a very interesting Golem, a Druddigon deck here in the tournament. Now, this deck definitely is starting to gain a little bit of notoriety right now, and we actually probably will look at it again. But yeah, Golem is an interesting Stage 2 attacker. It's a single prizer with 160 HP, so it's got a lot of HP. I mean, it's got more HP than a lot of the EX Pokemon have, and it has the attack Guard Press. It has 120, and then during your next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attack, so you make your Golem super tanky. The interesting thing about this Golem deck is it's kind of modeled how the Gyarados deck is built. You have this big Pokemon that does some big damage. It's very tanky, but it takes a while to get going. But you do have an Energy Acceleration supporter for it. So instead of Misty, you have Brock. Now, Brock does have the effect. You take a Fight Energy from your Energy Zone, attach it to Golem or Onyx. Now, you do have to get the Golem down in order for Brock to work, but it's a very useful card as a way to charge up your Golem. Once you get the Golem out, you can Brock to it to accelerate energy to it quicker. And the concept is the same, right? You sit behind the Druddigon, you put on a bit of pressure with that Rough Skin ability. The deck does play Marshadow and Hitmonlee for some extra support. Hitmonlee stretching attack can snipe something for 30, which can be useful, and then you have Marshadow, which does have that revenge attack that can do 100 damage if something was knocked out, which is also a pretty good attack for a fighting deck. So you have these 2 decent extra attackers to go off of. Golem being a Stage 2 makes it technically slower and worse than Gyarados. You also don't have Misty, you have Brock. Brock guarantees you an energy, though, where Misty sometimes you get double tails and you get no energy whatsoever. But it is interesting how this deck is starting to pick up attention right now. Also, being a fighting deck isn't bad against Pikachu, right? Speaking of fighting, there's a Aerodactyl Primeape deck here. I did a video on this deck recently, but this one is a bit different than the one I played. It does have the Primeape in there with the Mankey and the double Aerodactyl. It does play the other Aerodactyl, though, the one prize Aerodactyl with that primal wing beat attack that sometimes you flip a coin of heads, you shuffle your opponent's active back in their deck so you can reset a big threat off the board. Then you have the, went a little too far back there. You got the Hitmonlee in the deck once again to snipe something for 30, and the deck also plays that Mew EX. So it's like a toolbox style deck, which is pretty nice. So I definitely like the idea of kind of combining the two Aerodactyls together. And then to round out the entire top 8, it's just a sea of Gyarados Greninja. Like I said, this deck is taking off right now. I just did a video on this deck yesterday on the channel. So after you're done watching this video, you can go watch that video. But you can see the list here. I think the lists are all going to look the same. If they're playing the Greninja and the Druddigon, you're just going to see the Misty, the Research, the Leaf, and the Pokeball. I don't think there's going to be anything too fancy about a lot of these lists here, assuming it's also not playing the single prize Gyarados. But yeah, just they're all going to be potentially the same. The Misty, Research, Leaf combo is too good not to play. And then we finally got another one here. Like I said, just, yeah. Again, did a video on this deck. Pretty good deck. It's not bad at all right now within our format. All right, the next tournament we got is the Koru Community Tournament here. And the winning deck, of course, was the Celebi Exeggutor Superior deck. Now, this is a deck I'm also very interested in trying out very soon. I think Celebi is a very good deck. It's not... I mean, honestly, Gyarados might just have overlapped Celebi as, like, the best Mythical Island deck. But I do think Celebi is still very powerful. It's a very popular deck right now. It's a fun deck to play, right? Coin flips are always a fun time. But the problem with the Celebi's deck is that it's a little too linear, right? You're just kind of focusing on Celebi. The one thing I like about the build of Exeggutor Celebi is Exeggutor is a really good attacker in the early game. So you have this like early game attacker that can use Tropical Swing. Sometimes you can get random KOs out of nowhere with Tropical Swing, and that's what makes this deck kind of good, is you have that early game pressurizer while you can sit behind the Exeggutor and you can build up that Superior, get it into play, and then you can load up your Celebi. And then once you kind of have a Celebi with like 8 energy on it with Superior's ability, it's like it's pretty much unstoppable, right? And we have a very interesting Raichu Pikachu deck here with the new Pikachu with that Circle Circuit attack here. It's mostly just a Pikachu EX deck, I guess, but it does have the Raichu in here with Thunderbolt. Does 140, discard all Lightning Energy on the Raichu. This card is pretty good in combination with Lieutenant Surge to help move the energy around on to your Raichu. It does have the Electabuzz in the deck. It also has an attack that snipes something for 40, so kind of like that Hitmonlee. Just a nice way to deal with little Pokemon on the bench, which is what the Electabuzz does. And we have another couple of these Raichu Pikachu decks here. This one's a bit different. It does have the Pikachu Split. It's got the Electabuzz in there, but it also plays the Dedenne with Thundershock that can do 10 and paralyze your opponent's active. Sometimes flipping heads on a paralysis coin flip can be very brutal for the opponent to have to deal with, which is why that's good. And then we got yet another Pikachu Raichu deck here. Kind of same concept. It's got Electabuzz and Dedenne in the deck there. And then we got another Greninja Gyarados in top 8. This one does, however, play a couple of different cards. It does play only one Druddigon, but it also plays the one prize Gyarados and the Gyarados EX split. Only one EX and one prize Gyarados, so kind of trying to split between the two, but does have also Potion in the deck for a little bit of healing. It's definitely a card I kind of wanted to try to make work within the Gyarados Druddigon deck was a Potion, but it's just, I really like that 60 we did, right, and the one we looked at. It's just, it's nice. It's a good 60, but Potion definitely feels like it could be a decent card to play in the deck, and this one does have a couple Potions in the deck. And the other thing to note about the Raichu Pikachu deck, right, is you're going to have a decent matchup into the Gyarados deck, especially when you have the Electabuzz that can take out the Magikarps before they evolve. Speaking of Lightning, we got yet another Lightning deck here. We got Pikachu, Zebstrika, kind of a classic deck from the old format. Zebstrika also has a snipe attack, which can be very decent against Magikarp. If they don't get that thing evolved, you can just snipe the Magikarp and knock it out. And we got another Pikachu Zebstrika deck in the top 8. This one has Galvantula. Galvantula's got that Electro Web attack, which does 70 damage, and then during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can retreat. So it's a good way to kind of lock your opponent from being able to move, which is what makes the Galvantula also pretty strong in the deck. And you have the Zebstrika, so you have like a bit of a toolbox going on there. And last deck in the top 8, once again, another Gyarados Greninja deck in this tournament. Now this one does, however, play blue in the deck, so it cut down a little bit on the Ninja line. We got one Froakie, we have two Frogadier and two Greninja. You can kind of make that work, actually, because you play two Pokeballs. So if really you're just trying to get a single Greninja into play, you'd rather have more Frogadiers and Greninjas anyways, because you need a better chance of drawing into those. And the one Froakie makes sense, because those two Pokeballs can essentially act as 3 Froakies, and then, of course, you do have the Druddigon as a 1 copy. So you have a likelier chance of finding Froakie off Pokeball, if it makes any sense. But the deck did fit a couple blue in the deck for a little bit of extra defense, which is, pretty decent. I like it. So definitely not a bad list in this tournament. All right, next up, we got the Pocket Aces tournament here, which was won also by a Pikachu Raichu deck here. No Zapdos EX in this build, actually. So this deck was able to win the tournament with no Zapdos, but of course it does have the Raichu with Thunderbolt in the deck alongside the Lieutenant Surge and the Electabuzz Dedenne combo with the Pikachu EX. So just a lightning beat stick deck. And it was able to beat Mewtwo in the finals here. Now, Mewtwo definitely got a big upgrade with Mythical Island. This is the first time we've actually looked at Mewtwo, which is interesting, considering this deck was so good in the last meta. But I guess Gyarados maybe is starting to power creep it a little bit. But Mewtwo is definitely looking good, right? You got the new Mew in the deck as an extra attacker. Mew does work with Gardevoir. Mew's attack, genome hacking, is really, really good because you can copy so many different attacks, which can be very annoying. And then you got that Mythical Slab card, which allows you to look at the top card of your deck. If that card is a Psychic Pokemon, you put in your hand. If it's not a Psychic Pokemon, you put it at the bottom of your deck. So it's another easy way to help find your Gardevoirs and Curlias a lot quicker, which is what makes the deck a lot more aggressive. Because the thing with the Mewtwo deck is just, you're ultimately just playing a game where you're trying to get the Gardevoir out as fast as possible. The Mythical Slab just makes it easier to find your Gardevoir pieces, and that deck was able to make it to the finals. We had another Primeape Aerodactyl deck here in the top 4 of this tournament. This one does not play, actually, no, it doesn't play the other Primeape. It's playing a different Primeape here. We got the Primeape with Punch, 1 for 50, just a nice little beat stick attack, and it plays the new Mankey with Focus Punch. Instead of trying to hit yourself for 30, you can potentially flip a coin and do 50. So a little bit more coin flips going on. Does play the double Hitmonlee for the snipe and has the Marshadow, but only 1 Aerodactyl and 1 Old Amber, so it's kind of more of like a Primeape deck more than anything else. Just kind of has the extra attackers in the deck with the Aerodactyl and the Marshadow and stuff. So that's interesting. And then top 4, we got another Scolipede Weezing. Just a really nice one-price attacking deck, right? Or one-point attacking deck, I should say. It does have the new Tauros. This card definitely has potential to be good with the attack, fighting, tackle for 3 color synergy. You do 40 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a EX, you do 80 more damage, which is not bad at all, because you can do 120, and that hits pretty hard. 120 hits really, really hard. And that's what makes this Tauros so strong, is just how much damage it can actually do, which is why the Tauros is kind of a good card, because it's splashable in a lot of decks due to being a colorless Pokemon, so it kind of fits in this Weezing deck here, which is nice. Yeah, I like it a lot. Then we got another electric deck here, another Raichu Pikachu deck with Lieutenant Surge, Electabuzz, Dedenne, and the Raichu. No new Raichu seen yet. We did get a new Raichu Mythical Island. We haven't seen that yet in the top 8 of these tournaments. We got another Primeape deck here in top 8. No Aerodactyl in this build. It does have the Marshadow in the deck and the 2 Hitmonlee, so it's just opting to not play the Aerodactyl, just going straight into the Primapes and the Marshadows and the Hitmonlees. Primeape can be a very good card. Again, you start Mankey going second with the Primeape deck, it's usually pretty good because it can turn into a turn 2 Primeape, which can be a very early game attacker that can be very annoying to deal with because it can do so much damage. And then in the top 8, we got here another Gyarados Greninja. We're going to see a lot of this deck. So, yeah, and this, we're going to see a lot of the 60, too. Or 20 cards. I keep calling it 60. I'm still used to saying Pokemon TCG terms. I gotta get used to saying the same 20. And then we got another, Exeggutor deck. Almost another Gyarados deck. It is another Exeggutor Celebi deck here with the Spear. Yeah, I like it. I like this deck a lot. I think there is some potential for Exeggutor to be with Celebi. It might be better. Celebi might be better with Exeggutor. I'm not going to lie. I like it a lot. And that was in the top 8 of this tournament. All right, moving on. We got the Pocket Champions tournament here. We can quickly look at. The winning deck was Mewtwo Gardevoir. So, still winning in this new format. There's no Mew EX in this deck, but it does have the Jinx in the deck with the attack Psychic that does 30, plus 20 more damage, reach energy on your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, that could be very good against Celebi specifically, right? Celebi will have a lot of energy on them because of Superior's ability, and then Jinx can be a nice way to knock out a Celebi in one hit on a 1-point Pokemon, which is what makes the Jinx so strong within the deck. So the Jinx definitely has some uses in here. And then we got the Pikachu's Substrika deck once again. The one new card just being fit in the deck is that Paralyzed Dedenne, but still uses the Substrika. Then in the top 4, there's another Pikachu Raichu deck. We got the Lieutenant Surge. No Zapdos in this one, just played the Dedenne. Electabuzz has the Raichu. No new Raichu still. We haven't seen that yet. So I wonder if we'll see the new Raichu in this video at all. And then in top 4, we got yet another Mewtwo Guardian deck. This one does play the Mew EX, however, and does have the red card in the deck. Just to be a little annoying there, I'm sure. And then we got our first fire deck to look at here. We got the Charizard Moltres Arcanine deck. I mean, fire is nice, right? You just have a lot of power behind you. Didn't really gain any new cards, looks like, from Mythical Island, but for the most part, you just kind of do your thing. You flip with Moltres, you hope to flip a bunch of heads, you build up your Arcanine EX here with that Inferno on rush attack that does 120 damage, and then you can also charge up Charizard, which technically is one of the only Pokemon that can knock out stuff like Gyarados. The problem is you are weak to water, but you are not getting one-hit KO'd by Gyarados, technically, so it's only doing 160 to you. So you can one-shot Gyarados for 200 damage. So Charizard can be pretty unstoppable if you can set it up in those situations. That's like one of the benefits of playing the Fire deck right now, is you get access to Charizard EX. We've got another Pikachu Substrika deck here. Pikachu Toolbox, got the Electabuzz and Dedenne in there. Substrika does have the 2 Zapdos still in the list. It looks like, yeah. Then we got another Mewtwo Gardevoir. Lots of those. Yeah, another one of these. Got the Mew EX in there. Nothing too crazy. No Jinx or anything. Just plain the same stuff. And then, trying to the top 8, we had yet another Mewtwo Gardevoir. Does have the new Sigilif in there, so you got a bit of draw, you know? Drawing a card is not bad. It's kind of like when you would play the Meowth in the Mewtwo deck, you would want to draw a card, right? And then you can try to get towards your Gardevoir a lot quicker, which is kind of the idea behind playing like Sigilif or Meowth with the Mewtwo deck. And Sigilif does have more HP than Meowth does, which is kind of relevant in that regard. So that was the top 8 of this tournament here. And we can move on to the Pocket Legends tournament, which the winning deck was another Fire deck. All right, we got another Fire deck here doing good in the tournament. And this one was Arcanine Moltres. So there is no Charizard in this deck, just opting for Arcanine as your main attacker, which is fine. It's a decent attacker. 3 energy is a little, you know, decent to build up, especially with Moltres' attack. It's a stage 1, so it's not as slow as Charizard in a way. And then you have the Mew in the deck also as an extra attacker, and you just try to build up the Moltres. Now, it doesn't build up Mew. It'd be kind of broken if Moltres could power up Mew. It's only building up Arcanine, but while you're doing that, you can attach to Mew also. You can kind of build up a lot of threats with this. So that's a pretty decent combo deck for sure. I do like the idea of that. It actually looks like it was able to beat the Gyarados Druddigon deck here in the finals. Now, this one doesn't play the Greninja, but it does have an extra attacker in the deck with the Articuno, with the attack Ice Beam that can paralyze your opponent's active Pokemon potentially. So that can be a great way to slow your opponent down a little bit. And without playing the Greninja line, you can fit a lot more cards in the deck, right? You got Giovanni, Sabrina, X-Speed, Potion in the deck too, when you're not playing the Greninja line in the deck. You still have the Druddigon, though. Then in top 4, we got another Mewtwo Gardevoir deck. This one plays 2 Mew EXs, so just kind of goes all in on the Mew stuff. Just play the Budding Expeditioner with the Mew and stuff in there too. And then in the top 4, we got a Blaine deck. I mean, Blaine's pretty solid. Did a video on it. I like it a lot. It's not a bad deck. It can do a lot of big damage. We got that new Ponyta in the deck, which is nice. It's not playing the new Rapidash, however. It's just playing the 2 copies of the old Rapidash here with Fire Mane. And then it does have the Ninetales, and it's got the new Magmar, which can do 80, but you have to discard 2 fire. It's kind of like a worse Ninetales, but I guess it's not an evolution, which is kind of the benefit behind playing the Magmar in the deck. And then in top 8, we got another Celebi deck to look at. This one also plays Exeggutor, but it plays a split of the Exeggutor. It's got the new Exeggutor in the deck too, with Psychic. Does 80 damage plus 20 more damage for each energy on your opponent's active. Like the Jinx, it's just a nice way to take a big knockout on a Celebi deck if they get greedy and put a lot of energy onto their Celebi. It can be a great 1-point attacker to knock it out. So that's why the Exeggutor is so good within the deck. And it's easy to build up with Superior, right? You can put 2 energy on the Exeggutor, and all of a sudden Superior allows you to attack for just 2 energy, which is kind of insane. In the top 8, we got yet another Pikachu Zebstrika Toolbox deck here. Looks like Zebstrika seems to be one of the better ways to play Pikachu right now in our format. One of the nice things about the deck is that it should have a decent matchup into Gyarados. We got another Mewtwo EX Mew deck here with only 1 Mew in the deck as opposed to 2. And then in the final deck here in the top 8, it's another Gyarados Ninja deck. And as you can see, it's the same 20 we've been used to seeing for that deck. And I mean, outside the top 8, this was a pretty large tournament. I guess we had a little bit of a, no, not really a bubble. 10-3-1 made top 8, 11-2 didn't. That's interesting. I guess we can quickly look at these 2 decks with the 11-2 record. We got the Mewtwo deck once again with the 1 Mew outside top 8. And then we had the Gyarados Starmie deck also outside the top 8. I did a video on this deck too. This deck is pretty fun to play. Also, the Starmie just gives you a little bit of early game aggression. Just play the 2-1 Gyarados as opposed to the 2-2. Also fits Vaporeon and Druddigon in the deck, so kind of more of like a toolboxy approach to the style, but still has a Druddigon in the deck, which isn't too shabby at all. All right, finally, we have the Ursidae Pocket Weekly. Again, this tournament had 1,500 players in it. Crazy stuff. Some insane numbers. So these results are very important to look at, considering the player size. And the deck that won the tournament, surprisingly, was the Golem Drudagon deck. So, like I said earlier, this was not the last time we were going to see this deck, and I told you, this deck did win a 1,500-player tournament on Pocket, which is crazy. And we see this Golem list here. It looks kind of wild. I mean, again, it's like the Gyarados deck. You got the Drudagon in the deck, which you can sit behind. The Drudagon, you got the Golem in there as your big attacker as opposed to Gyarados, but you still have an bit of extra attackers, right, with the Hitmonlee and the Marshadow and stuff. So kind of crazy it was able to win the tournament. We can look at the deck it played in the finals here. It was actually the Arcanine Moltres deck also, like we looked at earlier with the Mew. This deck does seem pretty solid, so it's making finals in like these two tournaments. I mean, it's going to be pretty good if it's making this many finals. Then we got in the top 4 here, another Pikachu deck. With the Raichu, Thunderbolt, and the Electabuzz, Lieutenant Surge combo, just play Zapdos and Dedenne. So the best ways to play Pikachu is the Raichu, Lieutenant Surge build, or to play it with the Substrika. We had Charizard Arcanine also in top 4, the old classic Firebox deck, once again, with the Charizard EX, which I'd assume it would have a better matchup into the Gyarados deck, right? So there's that. And speaking of Gyarados, there's one in top 8, obviously. Look, same 20 we've been used to seeing with the 2 Gyarados EX, the 2 Drudagon, the 2 Misty, stuff like that. And then we had another Pikachu, a Substrika deck in the top 8 here, with the 2 Zapdos and the 1 Dedenne in the deck. The Dedenne could be pretty annoying to play against for sure if that thing flipped a bunch of heads. And the top 8, once again, it's another Pikachu Lightning Box deck. This one's a bit different, though. It's got Magneton in the deck with that Volt Charge ability where you can put a Light Energy for your Energy Zone onto the Magneton. The Magneton, Lieutenant Surge, also not a bad combo. Just kind of crazy. So, kind of cool stuff there. And then the top 8, we had another Firebox deck, Moltres, Arcanine, Charizard, Toolbox. There it is. We can look outside the top 8, too. Again, this is a pretty big tournament, so it's kind of important. Here we got 9th place. There was, I think, like a top 16 cut. And in 9th place, we did have the Mewtwo Gardevoir deck, again, with the 1 Mew EX in there. We got a Gyarados Ninja deck also in the top cut here. Same 20 we've been looking at already. Then we also had another Pikachu Substrika deck here with 2 Zapdos and the 1 Dedenne in that list. And then we had another Starmie Gyarados deck here with the 2 Vaporeon. Again, I did a video on this deck already if you want to see some gameplay of the deck in action, but it isn't bad at all, and it was able to make the top 16. And then we had a Gyarados Butterfree. Now, this one's interesting. It also plays Drudagon, but as opposed to playing Greninja, you have the Butterfree in the deck with that Powder Heal ability. Once you're in turn, you can heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. So it's kind of like you get a bit of healing in your deck. It does not give you the ability to do the extra damage that Greninja provides, but the healing isn't bad either, right? It can make it more awkward for the opponent to take knockouts when you're constantly healing with the Butterfree, which I kind of like. I like the concept of that. But then it puts a grass Pokemon in your deck, so sometimes you get grass energy zone, which can clog things up here. And in the top 16, once again, another Pikachu Zapdos deck. Probably the same 20 we've been looking at before. Another Gyarados Greninja Drudagon deck here. Same 20 we've seen. And then the last deck here in the top 16 was once again just another Pikachu Substrika Zapdos deck. And yeah, there you go. Those are the recent online tournament results here for the first week of Mythical Island. Some big takeaways. Gyarados is a very good deck right now. Also, a lot of Lightning decks like the Pikachu Substrika deck and the Pikachu Raichu deck doing pretty good in our online meta. The crazy thing, too, is maybe this Golem Drudagon deck could be legit. This Golem Drudagon deck definitely seems like it could be decent, right? It won a tournament, and that's a pretty big deal. It was able to win a tournament, and much like Gyarados, this idea of playing Drudagon might get more popular. We might be seeing more Drudagon decks in the future. If people can cook up more ideas for Drudagon, Drudagon definitely looks like it's going to be a pretty good card in our format. So those are some big takeaways right now out of the early Mythical Island results. Celebi didn't really perform as well as I guess people might have expected it to, but everything else just kind of checks out, right? The Gyarados deck doing really good. We saw a little bit of Poison, Wheezing, Scolipede action, some fighting action in there too with the Aerodactyl decks. There is one Celebi deck that did win a tournament, but Celebi is not as like over popular as we all thought it would. Gyarados is definitely the one that's most popular. Gyarados was the most popular deck in the Ursa Day tournament by far. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video here on the Pocket channel. And let me know if you like these videos where I look at some online tournament results. Again, I've done this video before over on the second channel where I look at Pokemon TCG online tournament results as opposed to Pocket, but I think it's a cool concept to do it on Pocket too for some extra content. Kind of just get a good gauge of what the metagame looks like on Pocket. But hope you all enjoyed the video. Again, if you did, leave a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. We're on the road to 1,000 subs here on the channel. I'll leave a link to Play.Limitless if you want to go play in an online tournament for yourself, and I'll catch you on another video. Bye-bye.